All right, are they all gone?
No.
Okay. Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather and this is my husband Kyle, and this is Naturally Catholic. All right, so we are finally sitting down, making the time to do a video. I know it's been probably like almost 2 months since the last video that we posted.
Yeah, it's been busy, and then it was the Easter season. I hope everybody had a nice Easter. And I think the last video that Heather posted was us and the garden, us kind of prepping things for.
Well, that wasn't the
springtime.
last video that I posted, but that was the
wasn't,
one. The most recent one of us.
Yes, okay. So that's what I meant. So I think this time her and I were talking, and we come across a lot of people who have an interest, when we kind of tell them our story about how we just kind of sold the house, lived in an RV, bought some property and built a house. And people, they have interest, but I think a lot of people kind of get a little apprehensive to make that sort of life change, which I mean, it's understandable. And so I think part of what we wanted to talk about today was just kind of like what to expect, what to know before you get into it, and also if there's interest in anyone watching this channel who has thought about that, also to please feel free to ask questions if we overlook anything.
Yeah, so this video is mainly going to go over the whys we did it, the how, and the
what to expect.
Yeah, what to expect. So starting out, what do you want to go over?
I think the why.
Okay.
I think the why. So we wanted to get property for a while. I mean, since we were living back, in Louisiana, we were wanting to get property, but we always wanted to come back to our home state. So we knew that wasn't the plan. And then once we moved back to our home state, then it was just a matter of us trying to figure out where to buy, what made sense, what was cost effective. What checked all the boxes, right? And so when people are going to make a move, they're always looking at, price and schools, right? And
school wasn't a problem
and safety,
for us.
And safety.
Yeah.
And so the place was safe, the price was right, and then school we didn't really have to worry about because we homeschool our children, and between the best school teacher and principal, I mean, there's nothing to worry about.
Yeah, it doesn't get better than that.
Yeah. So. So the why was we've been wanting to, and I think it's because we had a desire to want to be more self-sufficient, to have land. Anybody who has that kind of desire knows what I'm talking about. There's just this desire.
Yeah, but also we have a desire to be entrepreneurs. I think both of us want to do something with the property that is going to be kind of like a side hustle. Maybe not initially our first, our large income, or the main income is what I'm trying to say, but just like some extra cash flow, just stuff in the garden.
Utilize the land to its potential, right? So we've got loofah plants that we're growing, and then we've got chickens that we're about to get, in the coop. And then we've done, we grew a lot of vegetables and just kind of gave those away. And then I think the other thing too, for me at least, was when I wake up in the mornings now and I go say a rosary and I sit on the front porch and I just see the trees and the sun and the birds and everything, to me, it's just like this peace that is so nice to have, as opposed to when you're in a neighborhood.
Yeah.
You don't always have that. So the privacy, to me, was a big plus.
Yes. Yeah, so that's the why. And also I would add to our why, I feel like we were being called to our property. I feel like it was something that we needed to do to kind of just free us up. I don't want to say that like being in a neighborhood makes you feel chained, but I don't know. Being on land just makes you feel so...
Well, I think part of it too is we knew that we wanted to have a big family. And so now our boys, they have this property that they can just go run around and explore and just be boys, or little ladies when Victoria gets older.
Yeah.
And I grew up on land, and so I moved probably like around intermediate school, and there was pros and cons to both. I mean, when you're in a neighborhood, you can have friends and you have this kind of community. But the only thing that I always struggled with in that scenario is that a lot of times, like, who are these friends that are running around now in the neighborhood with your kids and everything else? So to me, the community aspect is fulfilled with close friends through church, or family.
Or just siblings, like the kids.
Well, family. I consider siblings family.
Oh, well, yeah. I thought you meant like cousins, because our family, my family actually does live in the neighborhood that we live in. So we are in a, country neighborhood, I guess you would call it. So that's where we wanted to be. Obviously, we could have bought like land elsewhere outside of a neighborhood, but we really liked this community neighborhood that we're in. And it's like lots of 5+ acres. So we live on 5 acres. It's unrestricted. It's lightly deeded.
Well,
right?
it's slightly deed restricted.
Oh,
so it's an acreage community where you have 20-acre home sites, 10, 5. There might be a couple smaller than that, but they kind of did away with really anything smaller than 5. And so it's a good community because you have that community feel with your groups that you have through the Facebook neighborhood app, and then there's a couple parks in the neighborhood where people get together and do things. So you have that community to where it feels like your neighbors are all watching out for each other.
You also have that privacy.
But you also have the privacy.
Yeah, so that was like our main why. And then I guess the how is like the part that we can't really answer because we didn't know how it was going to work out. We kind of just did it.
Yeah. It was around COVID and we were just talking. It's like, like everybody's worried about global warming and all these things. Look how quickly things can turn upside down just from something like this, right?
Did you mean to say global warming?
Yeah, like everyone always thinks the world's gonna end, and then this pandemic happens, and everybody just like the world shuts down. And I think that was another reason too, where we're like, we just want our own space. Like,
you saw how quickly groceries went and everything.
Exactly.
So I think that was a driving factor too.
Yeah, I mean, you can at least be more self-sufficient. And so I think for me, that was finally kind of the thing that said, hey, it's time to take this leap of faith. Like we've been praying about it for a while. But like St. Augustine says, you pray as if everything depends on God, and then you work as if everything depends on you. And so, God is not going to come sell my house for me and then, take care of everything, but he's going to be there for me throughout the process, even in times of uncertainty, right? And that strengthens your faith when you take that leap of faith. And so we finally just said, I think we were just talking, well, let's just put the house on the market and see what happens.
Yeah.
And like literally within a week,
yes,
we had an offer.
6 days,
and it was like, oh, wow. And you're like, well, what are we going to do? It's like, I don't know. What are we going to do? So we stayed with family for a little bit while everything was going down.
We stayed with your sister, then we stayed with my parents.
Yep.
So for like almost 2 months, we were couch surfing, and then that's when we decided.
And then we got the RV, and we
had to wait for everything to.
We still weren't
process.
sure where we were going to stay with the RV either. And then her sister and brother-in-law who live in the neighborhood were like, hey, y'all can come stay out here while your house is being built. So again, like,
well, and that's something to point out too. If you're buying land undeveloped, then you have to figure out like the RV situation, because that's something I don't think we really thought through, because we were thinking, oh, we're gonna buy our land, we're gonna be able to get the ball rolling, we're gonna get our RV on our property. But we actually weren't on our property until a year and a half after, when the house was 2 months out from being built.
Yeah. And a couple of reasons why is because in this neighborhood, like to get the power, you had to have certain things done, and then to get your septic put in, you had to be so far along. And so by the time all of that happened, we'd already been there about a year, right?
Yeah.
They're finishing the plans and then the building, and then 2 months of rain that just wouldn't stop.
Yeah.
So throughout that ride, we're just remaining prayerful and optimistic. I mean, look,
and then that's when I found out I was pregnant.
Yeah, there was 3 of us living in it. Well, there was 5 of us and our 3 kids. And then, about 4 months of living there, then all of a sudden we're going to be pregnant with our 4th child. And so I was like, okay, well, that was an unexpected curveball, but great. And so that process was, I hope it took some time off purgatory.
It was definitely an experience.
It was an experience.
And not only were we in an RV, like that, as if that doesn't sound bad enough, but we thought it would be great to just be minimal and get like the smallest one, because we don't need a big one. We were in a bumper pool, is that what it's called? Mm-hmm. And there was 1 bedroom, which isn't even a bedroom, it was just a bed with walls that kind of fit all around. And then a teeny tiny living space that was like 10 feet
with a pull-out couch.
With a pull-out couch. And that's it. And then like a little 3x3 bathroom. That's what we lived in. So
that being said, it was tough, but there were some really good memories that we made there. And as glad as we are to be out of it, or at least in my case, as glad as I am to be out of it now, looking back on it, like it was an experience and something our kids will remember. And so it's about your mindset. And so again, I want this video to be something that I'm being honest with people about what to expect depending on if they make this move and what that entails. But if your mindset is that you approach this with purpose and intentionality and you know why you're doing it, it makes it much easier to deal with the uncertainty and the rough times that happen, right? So yeah, it wasn't the best, but it was the best at that moment for us. Like there was a lot of good that came through that.
What's another thing you would say about the RV? I would say, just off the top of my head, what are they called? Tanks?
Yeah.
So that was something that was like a ongoing.
Yeah,
like,
I think that for me the biggest headache I had is I had to go drain tanks like every other day. Every other day I was draining tanks. Doesn't matter.
And if you're unfamiliar with what tanks are, there's no water system in an RV. It's just a big jug basically underneath the RV that, you know, holds all the dirty water and the septic water, and then you have to go and flush it and drain it.
Yep.
So you had to pull these long drains out, or long hoses.
Yeah, so where we were at, I couldn't leave the hoses exposed, so I had to trail them out, you know, 50 to 60 feet to where the tie-in was to the septic. Pull each, you know, contraption. It was such a long run that I had to start from one end and kind of walk down the hose to get all of the stuff out. And then I would take it and roll the smelly thing back up. And a day and a half later, I would do it again. And that to me was probably the most like aggravating thing. But, you know, I can tell you the last time I did it, I felt a sense of accomplishment where I was like, I am never going to have to pull. Now I say never, but in this scenario, it's like I'm never going to have to pull this tank again.
It's funny because I felt like the first week we were not living in the RV, I felt weird taking a shower because in the RV we would turn the shower on, get ourselves wet, wash our body, our hair, and then we turn the shower back on and rinse off really fast. And everybody took like 2-minute showers.
Yeah, and because I was a you know, I don't know,
surgeon,
a tank enforcer to where it was like, all right, that's enough. You're gonna fill the tanks up.
Yeah, we were always afraid to fill the tanks up. So that's something to keep in mind. There are things you can do, like you can pay for like a big tank to keep your hose connected to, and then someone will come and flush it. But we do.
Or if you have a tie-in and you're close and the people that are letting you stay there don't care if you keep it there, then that makes it easy too.
I can't remember why we couldn't keep ours.
I don't know, but it was just a long run.
But it's just something that we had to do. But again, time off purgatory, hopefully.
With RV living, yes, there are some ups and downs. But in the back of your mind, if you know what the bigger picture is, you know you're working towards something, just take those things as they come. Let it help you grow. I think Heather and I had so many talks like, babe, this is just helping us grow spiritually if we're focusing on that. The things that seem to be difficult right now and everything else, like we really are so blessed. We've got this land. We're building a house. Like just
having a baby.
We can do this.
And not only was it another baby, it was a girl, so that was exciting.
Yeah, and
so we have a bunch of boys.
So fast forwarding through all of that, right? So then we were hoping to be in the house by the time Victoria came, but we missed the window by like 2 weeks.
Well, and the other thing you forgot to mention is that we were building during a time where everything was on hold because lumber prices were so expensive and things weren't coming in on time. So the house budget increased significantly from the original estimates. And we had to pull a bunch of things that we had planned to do in the house because of that.
Yeah. And so again, but look, looking back on it now, that again was another kind of experience of just trusting in God and just saying, you know, all right, Lord, like, it is what it is. Like, I'm not going to fight this. This is out of my control. Prices are increasing for everything. Logistic nightmare of things arriving on time. You know, the front door, I think we would have been in sooner, but we were waiting on the front door for however long it took. And so there was a lot of great moments of growth throughout this process. So one thing is that if you're thinking about doing this, be spiritually ready to grow
and to run into hurdles.
And to run into hurdles, right? But the amazing thing is that every time there was a hurdle that seemed insurmountable, like it was crossed, right? And so it was almost like each time you're thinking, okay, well, this one, we're not gonna be able to cross this one. And sure enough, we do. And you know, obviously I credit that to God's divine plan for our lives and his providence. And so, but fast forwarding, so then we finally get to where now we have Victoria, we get to where now we're on the land. We've got everything like the structural and the infrastructure there to where we can move the RV. So we moved it here, and that was kind of celebration. And I got a washing machine, and I put on some pallets outside the RV,
gosh.
and we're washing clothes in the washing machine.
It was so
hanging
redneck.
them on the line.
It was so redneck, y'all.
And
You can see it.
it was.
I was pregnant 9 months. Actually, I was like due. I was past due. Washing laundry on this pallet in an RV.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. So then the house gets done, and so you're like, okay, well, guess what, right? So now that you have the house, well, now you have a lawn to keep up with, and if you're going to be clearing stuff, there's a tractor, and so then
yeah,
you
unexpected. So this would be the part where you say
so this is
all the unexpected things that no one thinks of when
Yeah.
you go to buy property.
Yeah, so then once we're in the house and we're kind of on cloud nine about, okay, we are in, oh my gosh, thank you, Lord, like we're here. And then reality sets into where it's like, okay, well now there's all these costs of keeping up with the property and the things you want to do to it, right? You want to have a garden, well, you need to fence it off. You need to get some compost. You need to do this. You want grass. You need to put either get grass seed or turf or sod. You want to continue to move trees and logs
or
and do
pathways
things.
so you can walk to your car without getting your shoes muddy.
Yeah, all that stuff.
Small
and then
things you don't think about.
tractors, running lawnmowers, chainsaws, and so like these costs just continue to escalate. And so I guess the main thing is like when you're planning, when you're thinking about doing this, if you're thinking about selling your house and going out to property, I think the thing to keep in mind is you have to know why you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Like why? Is it just because you've seen people do it and it just looks fun to do? You want a lifestyle change? And if that's your reason why, okay. But there's some people who do that and within a couple of years they're ready to sell it and go back to the city. So as long as you know your why, I think like Heather alluded to earlier, our why was something more of like, we just, number one, kind of felt called that this is where we wanted to raise our family. We felt called to be more connected to the land. Obviously her and I, we're not big on TV or the kids watching TV or video games or, I don't want to say technology like it's a bad thing.
We do use it from time to
but
time.
depending on how you use it, I mean, obviously we make these YouTube videos, so we're not totally against technology, but it's something that you really need to keep in a healthy dose, especially for children. And so being out here, the kids don't need any of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they just watching them run around is just awesome. And then there's so much to keep us busy outside. There's really no time for it.
I would say that most of our time is spent outside.
Yeah, it's either spent outside or it's spent in the house.
And not just on the weekends, like all the time.
Yeah.
Like we're outside after you get home from work doing stuff, and it's just, I don't know, when you live out here, it's almost like the yard, the land is an extension of your living room because you're just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I enjoy it that way.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it, right? You go to land because you want to enjoy it, like, and you want to, like Heather said, like, we had the land because we wanted it to work for us and we wanted to work with it. And so the gardens and the fruit trees we have, and then, we want to get, a cow and some things so we can, for meat and chickens. And so the ROI is just to be more self-sufficient so we can raise our family out here. And because honestly, like for me, I mean, I just feel at peace. Yeah. In a nutshell, if anybody's thinking about doing that, who watches this or has questions or is interested in doing it and has looking for any advice or any things to look out for or anything that we might have left out, I mean, feel free to shoot a message or ask any questions or any comments. Because I'm sure there's a whole lot of things that we also have overlooked because you tend to, once you get into that cycle of like doing
we're
it,
thinking
you
about
tend to forget certain things.
all this that happened 3 years ago. Like this was 3 years ago, and it took a year and a half, probably a little longer, almost 2 years to get in this house.
Oh, and one other thing that she had mentioned something and made me think of it too, but like the wildlife.
The wildlife.
The wildlife, like, I mean, the other day, I'm pulling in and it's like you got the rabbit. That's
I thought you were thinking. Okay, go ahead.
the children.
I did think.
But a rabbit's munching under one of the fruit trees, and a squirrel runs by and scares him, and then a cardinal comes flying down, and then
the
I
bird,
mean, there's
all
been
the bird
times
nests
around
that are everywhere.
Yeah, we have a bird's nest on our back porch actually. So there's eggs in there, but and then the deer, like there would be 6 of them, and they would just be playing out in the yard, and so there's something pretty cool about that too. Like I know sometimes in the neighborhood you'd see some wildlife, but it's nothing like it is out here.
It's just everywhere. They're everywhere. There's rabbits everywhere every morning.
We had a bird run into the homeschool window upstairs the other
That
day.
was really
and
sad,
he got knocked
actually.
out for a little bit, but he flew off, or
He's
something
okay.
flew off with him. But
Yeah,
so,
he's okay.
But yeah, I think that's the other really cool thing too, is just the wildlife.
In the pond, we have a pond, and I could go without it, but I'm glad that we have it because the kids really enjoy fishing, and it's another little extra bonus that we obviously have big plans for in the future.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. If you're moving on land, you're gonna have big
list,
plans. You know, and it's
long
like
list of
here's the
things.
prayer garden over here, and we put a
Stations of the
statue of the
Cross.
Blessed Mother, stations of the cross in the back, and then you got the
Yeah.
garden, and so. But that's part of the fun, right?
Yeah.
So, anyways, so.
And it's yours. You can do whatever you want on it. No one can tell you what to do.
You made me think of like when we were first looking at property into areas, there were certain areas where like you're paying a ridiculous
Oh, yeah, that's a good
amount
point to make.
for 3 acres.
Yeah.
And the minimum size home you had to build was like, 3,000 square foot. And then, but you could only have like horses on it. It was like, well, that doesn't work for us. Like we're not getting land because we just
Or you
want land
couldn't
in a
have-
big
some places
house.
you couldn't have any
certain
livestock.
things.
Stuff.
And so for us, that's why the slightly deed restricted neighborhood was such a good find, because the acreage price point was within where we wanted to be. It was lightly deed restricted, so we could still do 90% of the things we wanted to do. And the things that we didn't want to be surrounded by, obviously because of property values, you had those lightly deed restrictions. So like your neighbor doesn't just, have 20 cars sitting out in his front yard, and kind of make an eyesore for the community. So that was another thing, is like when you're looking around, 3 acres in one area or 5 acres in one area might not be as good as acreage in another
And
area.
it's also that much more because you're in the town.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's the grocery stores and the shopping centers. And so we opted to be further away from all of those things, about 40 minutes, 45 minutes out from all of those things, to have a cheaper price on the land. So you do have to consider that. Like, do you want to be in town and pay more per acre, or do you mind having a commute to work? Like his commute is an hour every morning to work and an hour back.
At
obviously.
least, depending on traffic.
And so those are the other things you have to keep in mind.
Yeah, and sometimes you just have to weigh two things out and say, well, what's more important, being closer to work but in this setup, or being further away from work but in a setup that really the whole family can thrive in?
Yeah.
Sweet. Sorry, I talked a lot on that one.
You always talk
but-
a lot. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. That really helps us out a lot. And if you're new, consider subscribing. We talk a lot about what we're doing on our property, gardening, and I talk about homeschooling a lot, and cloth diapering, healthy living, all of those things that go along with, land and whatnot.
Yeah. Let Heather know if y'all want to see some how not to videos, because I could probably put a couple of how not to videos, and we could all learn things together as far as like
how
to build things.
How not to fall from a tree.
I didn't do that from falling from a tree.
Well,
I was
it's
breaking
tree-related.
a tree. Tree related. So
Tree-related.
if you want to know how not to do things, so you can learn what not to do to learn what to do, we'll make a couple of those videos. Just let us know.
Yeah, for sure. All right, you guys, thank you so much. And until next time, God bless.
God bless.